never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with Al Barker of Stanton, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Barker, can you begin with some background on yourself? To start with, where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Stanton, Michigan on the 25th of February. No, wait a minute, 17th of February, 1925.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay.
And I born and raised on a farm. And of course, as the years went by, eventually I got to the age where I was drafted into the service.
Now, how many kids were in your family?
There was 5 of us, 3 boys and 2 girls.
And where were you in line?
I was the last one in 5, and I'm the last one left today.
Right. Okay. Now, did your family get to keep the farm through the 30s?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad did.
And what were you growing on it?
Oh, potatoes and corn and hay, wheat, different things like that.
Okay, so how many acres did you have?
We only had 40 acres, but
Okay.
my father made a living for all of us on that. I don't know how, but he did.
Did he do other kinds of jobs too to make extra money here and there?
Well, he used to help the neighbors some, you know, in the farming process.
All right. And how far did you go in school?
How far did I go
Yeah.
in school? I went to the 8th grade.
Okay.
And I don't know, I didn't get along too good, and I finally dropped out of school.
All right. And what?
I'm sorry for, but anyway, everything worked out well for me.
Okay. Now, what did you do then after you dropped out of school?
Well, I worked around by the day for farmers and I did different things.
Okay. Now, do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, heavens, yes. Just like it was yesterday.
And how did you learn about it?
Well, my cousin and I at that time, we were approximately, I'm going to guess maybe 17, 18 years old, getting in there
I
close.
think you were 16 probably.
16, yeah. And we'd been rabbit hunting, and the neighbors east of us. And so we came home, and of course his folks had a battery radio. We walked in the house, and they said, well, Pearl Harbor's just been bombed. And oh my gosh, we just fiberglassed, you know, then at that time. And that's how we found out about it firsthand.
Now, before that, did you pay any attention to the news from the world or the war in Europe or that kind of thing?
Not really, no.
So you weren't really expecting we were going to get in a war?
No, not really.
All right. And then once it happened, what was the reaction in your community?
Well, everybody wanted to do the best they could to help out, as far as I could tell.
All right. Now, did you consider enlisting, or did you figure they were just going to catch up with you anyway?
Well, I probably shouldn't tell you this way, but this is the way it actually happened as far as I'm concerned. There used to be a fellow by the name of Rasmussen. He was on the draft board. And of course, I had an opportunity to work for him on his farm, and he would get me deferred. And I said, no, I'm going to, nobody be able to say that they kept me out. No way.
All right.
So I went with good intentions.
All right. And then when were you drafted?
1943.
Okay. It's kind of, I think you got here in your notes, like the sort of the middle of the year.
Well, let's see, I went in boot camp in July.
Okay.
So it was just before that I was drafted.
All right. Now, where did you go for boot camp?
Camp Porter at Great Lakes, Illinois.
All right. And then how would you describe the facility there? What kind of place was it?
Well, it was really quite nice. It was several barracks all over the place, and there was approximately 125 men in our outfit. And it was really quite nice. It had a big gym, place where you could work out, and then we did all kinds of exercises. Had a swimming pool, and did a lot of marching and all that, you know, and learning how to obey orders, you know.
Now, did you have a hard time with that, or was
No,
that okay?
I got along with it real good. We had one fellow that didn't want to get along with that too well, and he ended up getting a real good bath with heavy kayak brushes. Laid him right up on the table where we did our washing of our clothes, and they worked on him with that. And I'll tell you, he started taking a shower after that.
Okay, so you had guys who just didn't do things like that, or
Yeah.
you know?
No, I mean, the thing of it was, your whole outfit wanted to do the very best you could. and you didn't want somebody dragging his feet,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing bad things for us. And that's what they did to him. When he wouldn't take a shower, they did that to him.
All right. Now, while you're at Great Lakes in the boot camp area, do they actually send you out on boats, or you just stay in the camp and drill, or what?
No, we had boat process of working, rowing a boat and all that stuff too there.
Okay.
And it was quite nice.
Now, did they make you all swim?
Oh yeah. Then that gets back to me too. We had one fellow was a good 6 foot, a big man, and he could not swim. And they got him up there on that platform, told him to jump in. He wouldn't jump in. They shoved him in,
Mm-hmm.
and they just about let him drown before they pulled him out. And thank goodness I could swim enough to keep myself afloat, so I did all well.
Now, with somebody like that who couldn't swim, would they just keep him in training until he could? Or?
Well, I suppose they did. I never knew much what happened to him after that, but I well remember seeing that guy jump in, and I know he couldn't swim, and I could see it.
All
He
right.
was just fighting it for all he was worth.
Okay. And then, did you have classroom work as part of the training at that point, or was it?
Yeah, we had stuff like that. You had to learn how to tie a lot of different knots and so forth and that stuff, you know, anything pertaining to the Navy.
Now, did you actually use that stuff when you were out on your boats?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did they give you any weapons training at that point?
We had some, but I don't know if we had much weapon training there, no.
No, it was just kind of drill and march kind of
I
stuff.
don't recall. We did a lot of marching around and that stuff.
All right. Now, how long did the boot camp last?
8 weeks.
Okay. And then during that time, did they let you off the base at all?
Never off the base.
All right. Now, what happens to you after you're done with boot camp?
Then you get a few days home and on leave before you report to other places, you know, from them.
All right. And where did you go next?
Well, let's see, where did I go next? I went back to Great Lakes after I had my leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shipped me from there to Pleasanton, California.
Right.
That was the holding station out there for a bunch of troops. And so we weren't there but a short while, and they loaded us aboard ship, and we headed for the South Pacific.
All right. And what do you remember about that sea voyage?
Well, a great lot, and an awful lot of sick people, including myself. But after I got aboard PT boats, it leveled out, and I never had any problem. But it took us 17 days to go from San Francisco to New Caledonia.
Mm-hmm.
That was our first stop in the Pacific.
Okay. And let's see, now, did you travel in a convoy or by yourself?
Well, by ourselves.
Okay. And what kind of ship was it you were on?
It was a big Dutch transport. I can't remember
Okay.
the name of it right now, but it was a big thing.
Now, was it like a converted ocean liner or just a cargo ship? Or?
No more like a cargo ship,
Okay.
I'd say, than anything.
All right. But it didn't need an escort, just kind of went by
No,
itself.
apparently didn't, no.
All right.
They had armed guards aboard it, but, you know.
Yeah. Now, do you remember if the ship zigzagged as it crossed the ocean or just went in a straight line?
I don't recall that, but
Okay. Now, did you have any kind of ceremony when you crossed the equator or the dateline?
oh yeah, so the guys got the treatment when they crossed that. Well, I lucked out, I didn't get in. They got most of the officers
Okay.
that were involved, you know, going across.
So about how many men do you think were on the ship? How many servicemen?
Oh my goodness. Several thousand,
Okay.
it had to have been.
Yeah. So they couldn't get all of you.
Because they had Marines and they had Navy and they had Army both.
All right. And were you basically going out there as a replacement? You were going to go join somebody's unit?
That's apparently what the Navy had in mind.
Okay. So you get out finally to New Caledonia.
Yeah.
Get off the ship. Do you stay there for a while?
Yeah, we stayed there for a while. They had a base there where they kept us, you know, and fed us and everything, and it was nice. And then one day they loaded us aboard another vessel, a smaller vessel. And we headed on up to what they call Rendova in the Solomon Islands.
Okay. Now, is that where your PT boat squadron was?
That's where it was, at Rendova. That's where I joined up there.
All right. Now, did you join, was there a PT boat already that you just joined the crew for, or was it a new PT boat? Or?
No, it was there, and I just joined the squadron. I was more or less an extra hand at that
Okay.
time.
All right.
And I was at the base for a short while then until some of the guys had their time in and they'd be transferred back to the States and they replaced them in on the PT boat.
All right. Now, what kind of base or facility was there on Rendova? What did that look like?
Well, we had lots of food, good food.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had a dry dock there that was made of tanks, you know, and they'd fill them with water and sink them. You'd run a PT boat in there and then tie it up. Then they'd pump that water out, and that'd bring it up out of the water so they could redo the bottom and paint it. And if they had to put new screws on the motors, you know.
All right. Now, I think in this story, I think we did maybe skip a step here. You did your boot camp training,
Yeah.
but then did you get PT boat training before you went overseas?
No, I didn't.
So you didn't go to.
So I didn't actually go through this school. I joined a squadron once I got overseas.
Okay. So you didn't go to Rhode Island or whatever and train over there.
I went there later
Okay.
after I got back.
After you
to
got back.
States, I
Okay.
did.
Okay. Training other people. All right. So we're there. You're at the base at Rendova. Now, so the sort of the end of 1943, pretty much by the
Yeah.
time you're out there. Now, at this point, what was going on? What were the PT boats doing?
Well, they were patrolling islands in the area, you know, around Rendova.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several of them that, you know, I don't know how many miles away they were, but it was a pretty good trip. It'd last all night when they went on patrol.
Mm-hmm.
Two boats always went together.
Okay. And what kinds of things would you find when you went out on patrol at that point?
What kind of things?
Yeah.
would we
Who was
find?
out there? What was out there?
Well, there was a lot of water out there. I
Mhm.
remember that part of it. But we spent a lot of time after dark, you know, a lot of it you couldn't see. But it was rough, really.
Now, was there much Japanese activity going on? I mean, were there-
Not a lot then.
Okay.
But as we got further up, I would say around Bougainville and some of those other islands up the way in the Solomons, why the boats from our squadron used to patrol the islands and different islands and catch these Japs moving troops and ammunition from one place to another. And that's where the two boats always operated together. See, one boat would go in and give them everything they had, and they'd go out and lay to for a short while this other boat made its run on them.
Mm-hmm.
We just kept a circle round and around them like that.
Well, would the first boat then still have? Now, would they? So they didn't run through all their ammunition on the first time.
Oh no, they'd reload and get ready to go again.
Okay. Now, would you fire torpedoes if you had targets?
No, we didn't. No, there wasn't any targets big enough for that there.
Okay. So the Japanese are now using pretty small boats to
Yeah,
move
they
things
had
around.
small boats. They had some artillery on them, which was kind of nasty, but we didn't encounter with it too much damage on that part of it.
So you're not even meeting something as big as a destroyer at this
Oh
point.
no.
No, just little stuff. Okay. And so you go, you reload, and so forth. Now, how long could you do that? How much ammunition would you carry for a mission like that?
Well, now that it's pretty hard to really tell. I know one thing about it: a lot of ammunition, if it got any salt water on it and deterred it in any way, why they just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we'd come back to the base, we'd go to the armory and check out a bunch of new stuff.
Right. Okay. Now, what was when you were first assigned to a boat? Which boat were you assigned to?
288 boat was my
PT,
first boat.
PT 288. And then what was your specific assignment?
I was a loader on a 20 millimeter when I was on there.
All right. So how many men would it just be a two-man crew for a 20 millimeter? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
One guy did the fire and the other guy did the reloading.
Okay. Now, in total, how many men would be on a PT boat?
Well, towards the end of the war, they weren't designated for that many,
Mm-hmm.
but we probably had 17 to 18 men on a PT boat. But they originally was maybe 7 to 10 at the very most
Mm-hmm.
when they first come out with them.
And what did they do with the extra men?
Well, actually, when we had extra men, like when I was on them, they had all these other guns on. They didn't have as many of these small arms on there, smaller guns.
Okay. Yeah. So now
They were
you're
strictly torpedo boats then, and then when they had a small crew.
right. Yeah. I'm not sure that PTs ever successfully torpedoed all that many things.
No, not really. But I've been to Melville, Rhode Island, or not Melville, no, that's not where I'm thinking. Fall River, Massachusetts, where they have the museum there, and somebody has got it on tape there that they're responsible for sinking the most tonnage of any naval vessel. The PT boats were.
Okay.
I've heard that. Now I don't know that for a
Yeah.
fact, but
I don't know. we'll have to go look that up.
Yeah.
Well, but they found, I think they did find that just the guns they carried were very handy, especially for shooting up smaller boats and,
Oh, yeah.
and making trouble of different kinds.
You're right.
And they did plenty of that. Now, did you also have missions where you were kind of carrying supplies to Americans or picking up personnel or moving them around?
Yeah, we did that too. We occasionally used to pick up Filipinos that were high dignitaries, I suppose, from different areas. We'd go in to get into about 6-7 feet of water, and that's as far as we could go. We had to wait for them to come out and take them aboard.
All right. Did you ever have missions where you were trying to pick up, downed pilots or people?
No, but some of the boats did that.
Okay.
It was one of the things.
All right. Now you start out, you're sailing out of Rendova. Now, did you change bases from there?
Yeah, we went on up to different ones. One of them was Green Island, Treasure Island, Bougainville, several of them on up through there.
Okay. Do you remember kind of where were Green Island or Treasure Island? Were they still near the Solomons or somewhere else?
They were in the Solomon
Okay.
group, yeah, on up through there. But one thing that is kind of worth mentioning, and I often think about it, and it probably never should have happened, but after I got out of the hospital, as I was telling you there, I had to catch a ride on up to join my squadron, which had moved on up from Rendova. So anyway, on the way up there, we was within sighting distance of the Bougainville Island, where I was headed for, and they was having trouble with the motors on the boat. So they were just kind of laying to there, and the engineers were working on the motors. I and another fellow we were just passengers, really. I was sitting up on the bow of the boat, and we had a bunch of gear stored there, covered with a canvas and covered with a huge white star. And I saw this plane go over ahead of us, going away from us, twin engine, and it was up quite high. And we just admired it going like that, and nobody seemed to be alarmed in any way, we figured it was one of our own. So we wait, the guy still hadn't had the motors running yet, and when they hadn't got them going yet, pretty soon I looked up and I said, this guy said, hey, look at there. That plane was coming back. And then it was kind of flying, with its wings like they ordinarily would, only he turned the wings like this on an angle. Started coming down, and like I said, 50's going tut, 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 tut. I thought, ooh, this is not good. And believe it or not, there was one bullet hit the boat, and it went right through that radar dome that you see in those pictures in there. That's the only bullet that hit the boat. And of course, they right away called general quarters, and they never came back. But had they came back, I think we'd had a warm reception for them.
Right. So it was just a single bomber out there
Yeah.
by itself, just out patrolling, yeah.
But it was kind of scary there for
Yeah.
a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. Now, you mentioned you were in the hospital. Why were you in the hospital?
I had malaria.
All right. Now, by the time you got out to the Pacific, I mean, the U.S. military was trying to be pretty good about preventing malaria. They gave everybody Atabrine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So were you taking Atabrine?
I'd been taking it, but like you say, I might have neglected it a little bit, and I should have paid more attention.
All right. Now, did anybody tell stories about Atabrine or tell you it would do something bad to you?
No.
Okay, so you didn't hear any of those?
No.
Okay, just kind of forgot one day or
Yeah.
for a while and picked it up. Now, how long were you sick with the malaria?
I was there probably, I'm going to guess, maybe 2 weeks.
Okay, and you were telling me a story before we started here about you get sick, you get a high fever, you're on your boat.
Yeah.
Now, how did they get you off the boat?
Well, they took me in like a stretcher and laid me on my mattress right on the deck of the boat. Took me over to this hospital, tied up at the dock over there, and took me to the hospital from there.
And what happened when you got off your mattress there?
I could see right where I had laid. It was just like a, trail all the way around where I'd sweated so much from
So you left a
the
print there.
chills and sweating both.
Right. Now, how did they treat malaria?
Well, some people, they give them, one guy there, for some reason or another, they did a spinal on him in the same ward where I was at, and I often wondered why that was, but apparently that was part of his treatment too. But they take good care of us. They did real good job on us.
Now, I mean, could they do anything for you, by way of actual treatment, or do they just let you lie around for a while?
Well, I don't recall that much, but I apparently got to feeling better, so I was able to join the squadron and got back onto the Atterman like I was supposed to. And
Now, do they also have you take quinine for the symptoms, or?
oh yeah, they give you all kinds of stuff to try to fix you up on it.
All right. And then, so you're out for a few weeks, you come back, join your unit again. Now, while you're with the PT boats, are you able to find out what's happening in the rest of the war or in your area? Do you know what's going on?
Well, not really an awful lot about it. They had this Tokyo Rose, and she was always yapping on there, you know, and telling about how nice it was back here in the States, you know. She tried to discourage a lot of troops, but it didn't work.
Yeah. Now, did she ever talk to your squadron?
Did she ever what?
Did she ever start send a message?
Mention any particular squadron?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of.
Because some guys in some units would talk about hearing her talk about their particular division or ship or something like that. Yeah. But you didn't get singled out.
No, we didn't get singled out that I know of.
All right. Now, how much? Let's see. Now, you mentioned you saw one Japanese airplane? Was that the only Japanese plane you saw?
Well, we don't know whether it was Japanese or not, but it must have been.
Well,
either that or it was somebody trigger happy.
Yep. Someone who made a mistake. Now, as you went farther north, as you kind of got up out of the Solomons, so you're in Bougainville for a while. Now, Bougainville still has a Japanese base on it.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a place called Buin that's still there. We just sort of surrounded it and bypassed it and kept going. Now, did you go and harass that harbor or watch them, or?
Well, we probably did. I don't recall, but I think actually we bypassed a lot of places, you know, and cut them off so they couldn't move anywhere. So
Right.
then we kept moving up, you know.
Okay. Now, did you have what amounted to kind of a daily routine while you were in the Solomons and different places? I mean, you know, what do you do each day? When do you go out? That kind
we'd
of thing.
have to help take care of the ship, keep the decks clean, and might have to do some painting here or there if something needed painting.
Okay. Now,
Pretty much that.
okay. So you maintain it. So now then, do you actually then go out at night or late in the day, or when would you leave the
When
base?
we'd leave about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd be gone from then till the next morning. We'd come back to the base about daylight. We'd be gone all night.
So when do you sleep?
Well, you didn't get much sleep then.
Okay.
We'd rest when we'd get back to the base, you know. Of course, then the next night, if a boat's went on patrol, they'd be a couple of different boats would go.
Okay. So you're rotating
They
who's going
rotated
out.
them, yeah.
Okay. Now, how many boats were in the squadron?
12.
Okay. And normally, how many would go out on a given night?
2.
Okay, just 2.
Yeah, depending on where unless they were going a different place.
Yeah.
But in one area, they'd always 2 go together.
So what do you do on the off days?
Well, just tinker around if you had some hobbies you wanted to work at. I had one good friend that I've often thought about him a lot of times, that he was from California, and there was a tent we had on one of the island bases, and they stored paint in that. And so he was in there getting some paint to work on handles of knives that he used to make, like hunting knives. And so the Seabees, or Seabees, they were falling a bunch of trees in that area, and so they ordered it to be cleared, you know, nobody in there. So they started falling their trees, and one of them went across that tent and killed this guy, which
wow.
was my good friend.
Okay.
And I often wondered what the government,
What they said to his family?
how they answered that to the family
Yeah.
after the war, you know, whenever.
Right. Okay. Now, did they provide any kind of entertainment for you on the island?
Oh, definitely. I got to see Bob Hope and his crew.
Who did
Jerry Colonna, you remember him with the big mustache?
Okay. Well, he's before my time, but
Well, you may have seen him. He was always rolling his eyes, and he had dark hair and big old handlebar mustache.
all right. Now, did they bring movies to the island so you could?
Oh yeah, we had movies. We could go see a movie occasionally. I went aboard the battleship Pennsylvania to a movie one time down in the Solomons. And what they would do on that, they'd pick you up in a naval vessel, little boat, you know, that ran
Right.
around the harbor. Pick up anybody wanted to go to the movie. They'd go around all the boats and pick them up, and take them over to the ship, and we'd go and watch a movie.
All right.
And I remember going aboard the Pennsylvania, and I walked along, and I tapped like that on that turret. It's just like tapping on the middle of the street out here. No sound whatsoever, boy.
All right. Now, as you move farther north, you go up to Bougainville. Now, do you go up to the Philippines from there?
Yeah.
All right. And where did you go first in the Philippines?
Well, we didn't, I don't know just exactly where we went in there. We more or less traveled around, and we didn't have a base set up there. We were moving pretty much at the time when we went through the Philippines.
All right.
And I didn't have a base till I got on up to Puerto Princesa in the Philippines.
Right. So when you had a period when you didn't have a base, did you get served by a PT tender?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And so how would that work? I mean, you run out of ammunition, you want food, whatever. What do you do?
Well, when we wanted food, we'd get to where there was a ship that had food on it. Boy, we'd scrounge everything we could get off from, you know. And they were generous about it.
Okay.
And so it was no problem. And I can truthfully say I always was fed real good in the Navy.
All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the PT boat itself. First of all, about how big was it?
Well, they were 79 to 82 feet in length. Approximately, loaded with gasoline, ammo, and everything. They'd weigh better than 50 ton.
Okay.
And we had all of this, like I say, this ammunition and stuff aboard. And they were quite the thing, quite a vessel.
All right. And what kind of power plant did they have?
We had 3 12-cylinder Packard engines that pushed them through the water. 2 was always ready to go, and the third was a reserve engine.
Now, did you ever run all 3 at once?
Yeah, we have done it, but not very long.
Okay. All right. Now, what's a PT boat made out of?
They're made of plywood and mahogany. Quite a nice looking vessel, really. They were nice.
Okay. Now, did you have to work pretty hard just to maintain the wood hulls and keep them from getting eaten by
Well,
worms?
they had to get them in dry dock and get the shells from the sea that would collect on the bottom. That'd
barnacles
slow it down, you know.
Okay.
So they'd put them in dry dock and clean and scrape that and redo the bottom of them.
Yeah. Because I know in the old days, wooden sailing ships and things, you would have problems with worms that would eat the wood and that kind of stuff. Now, did you have any of that, or did
No,
you have
we didn't
varnishes?
have any of that way, no.
So you kept those out anyway.
No.
All right. Now, if you're going around in a little boat made out of plywood, doesn't that seem kind of dangerous? If people are shooting
Not
at you?
really. I mean, you know, I always felt that I was quite safe on it. And I figured with all that gasoline and everything, if we lost it, we weren't going to need it anyhow. That was a good way to look at it, you know, really.
Okay. Now, when you got in the Philippines, did you start encountering more Japanese than you saw before, or?
No, I think they were less when we got up that way.
Okay.
Because they had them pretty well cleaned out up that way, too.
All right. In the last, so that last stage of the war, when you're up at Puerto Princesa and so forth, and that's kind of sort of the southwest end of the Philippines toward Borneo?
Yeah.
That's right.
Toward Borneo.
Okay. Now, did you go down toward Borneo then on your patrols?
Yeah, one night 2 of our boats went out on patrol down there as a standard procedure. And they come back the next morning and they were pretty well blistered. They'd been hit a few times. So the commander of our base assigned 2 boats to go back down there in broad daylight. And I was just about due to come back to the States at that time. And I thought, well, this is going to be great. Our boat was one of them. And so down there we went, broad daylight. And I'd say we was within less than 500 yards of the shore of Borneo. Just cruising along slow, everything ready to go. And the Japs never give themselves away.
Okay. So you didn't go toward the big oil ports or places like that. You were just
No,
on the coastline over there. All right. Now, when you're on these different islands, did you have much contact with the local population?
Not really, no. The natives, you mean, like
Yeah,
they were there?
yeah.
No. Very little.
Did you see any in the Philippines, or were there more in the Philippines than in the Solomons, or?
Well, they were, I'd say they were more, what do you want to call it? More intelligent, really. Actually, the ones down in the Solomon group, a lot of those people don't live to be over 40 years old. But you get up in the Philippines and they're very nice people, a lot of them. I know met a lady we went ashore one time down there, and I and another guy, and while we were tied up there, and we went wandering back in this little village, and here these women and their girls were washing GI's clothing for them.
Mm-hmm.
They did that a lot. And I said to the one girl, I said, how would you like to go back to the United States with me? Oh, she said, oh, no, my mother, she wouldn't like that. She said. So it was great, you know, and they were nice people.
Now, you brought a couple of sort of artifacts with you into the interview. And
Yeah.
one of them is was a little knife.
Yeah.
Now, was that from the Philippines or from the Solomons? Or?
I'd say that was from the Solomons.
Okay. How did you get that?
Well, there was a little native boy come along one day, and he wanted one of these white T-shirts that we had, the Navy wore. And I said, well, what do you got? And he showed me this little knife. And he said, we trade? And I said, yeah, we'll trade. So I got this little knife in exchange for my T-shirt.
Okay, and it's got kind of a carved handle and
Yeah,
a wooden
carved
sheath
handle and a
so
real
forth.
nice blade on it. It must be all pounded out, the steel on it. Must have took him quite a little while to do it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Now, in the other piece you had, there was like a little piece of shrapnel.
Yeah, I had a little piece of shrapnel that one time after we come back from patrol, I thought, well, I was kind of looking things over. You always do. You look your vessel over, and I see this little piece of shrapnel sticking on the side of the boat. So I thought, well, by God, I'm going to dig that out. I'll hang on to that as a souvenir.
Okay. Well, now, did your boat take much battle damage?
No, not that particular time. They didn't know.
But did they on other occasions?
No, not really. We didn't have too much problems that way.
Did you have any men get killed or injured who were on
Oh
the boat?
yes, we had an engineer that had the safest place on the boat. He sat right down in the engine room, right between three motors, you know. Kind of in the middle, there would be one motor back here, one on each side of him. In some way, a piece of shrapnel or of a shell of some kind came through that boat and hit him real high in the leg, and of course he bled to death before we get him back to the base.
Okay. And was he the only guy killed in action you had?
Yeah, he's the only one who had killed in action that we had that I recall. But we had two other fellows, like I was telling you about, in the rope locker.
Yeah. Well, you need to tell that now that we're on
Yeah.
camera. Yeah. What happened? What happened with them?
Well, they come up out of there and jumped in the water.
Okay. But
A couple guys jumped in and grabbed them and pulled them out.
But you were talking about that before the interview started, so you have to go back to the beginning of the story. What were these guys doing that got them in trouble?
Oh, they were down in there cleaning the rope locker on this boat.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a job they had to do, and cleaning it with gasoline. And of course, it got ignited with that accelerator generator we had on the boat there for lights. And boy, and it was a flash fire. Of course, they got it out right away, but they come topside, and I well remember guys jumping in to grab them.
Mm-hmm.
When the guy put his arm around him like that, you can just see the skin just go. Ooh,
Yeah.
gruesome.
Did the guys jump in the water to try to
Yeah,
cool
they
off?
jumped in that salt water, and that didn't help.
Yeah. All right.
And they got them to the sick bay. We had a sick bay there on the island at that island base that we had.
Yeah.
There. And they didn't either one of them live till morning.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't figure they would.
Okay. Now, how long did you stay with the PD boat? Were you there at the end of the war, or had you left by then?
No, I had left before my boats left.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see, because you've got. Now, did they have a system for PT boat crews that was sort of like pilots or air crew? You do a certain number of missions or something, and then you get to go home, or how did that work?
No, we never had anything along those lines. We had to put in our time over there and doing what we had to do. Occasionally, they did pick up a pilot if something happened, you know.
Right. But for you, I mean, the crewmen, because you go, why did you get to leave the Pacific before the end of the war?
Well, I figured that the reason I left it, I had my time in. They figured so many years or so many months of service while you was over there, then you were eligible to come back to the States.
Okay. Because they did have the point system, I guess, and you get different numbers of points, and maybe you had enough combat missions or enough.
I suppose it could be. I never did hear why or how they did it.
Yeah. Because the pilots, if you were a pilot or if you were with a bomber crew, for instance, if you survived 25 or 35 missions, they rotate you back.
Yeah.
And maybe they had something similar for you guys, or you just got enough points somehow from your time in action. So how did you find out you were going home or back in the States?
When I knew I was getting close, because guys that ahead of me were coming back.
Mm-hmm.
One day they said, well, it's time to go back to the States.
All right.
And I got aboard a C-47 down at Lady,
Mm-hmm.
took a boat ride down there and got aboard that C-47. No, I flew down there in the C-47. And then that's where I boarded ship to come back to the States.
And what kind of ship were you on going back?
Well, that was a big one. I don't recall what it was. Names at that time didn't enter me. I was coming home.
Well, was it a Navy troop transport, or
It was a big transport, yeah.
okay?
That's where we lost a man that died aboard ship, and they had a burial at sea.
Mm-hmm. And so, what do they do for that? How did that work?
How did that
Yeah.
burial at sea work?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was quite smooth, really, and very nice. I knew that it was going to happen because they announced over the ship that what they had to do. And so I got as high on the ship as I could get where I could see real good. And they had him on a platform underneath the flag.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through their routine, you know, and everything, and tripped it. And you could see it. He was just like wrapped up just like a mummy.
Mm-hmm.
And he went into the water just that quick.
Mm-hmm. Now, aside from that event, what was the trip back like? Was it easier than the trip over?
Nice, very nice trip coming home. I know I probably shouldn't have done it, but nobody told me I couldn't. But I took my hammock and I strung it up right underneath a lifeboat.
Mm-hmm.
And there was where I slept every night on the way home.
Right.
It was nice. I just rocked myself to sleep.
Okay. And roughly when was this that you were coming back home?
Well, that was, let's see.
Let's see here.
That would probably be
Early 45 sometime.
early 45 probably along in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then once you got back to the States, what did you do?
Then we went to a naval holding station there in San Francisco, and we got replenished with new uniforms, new coat and everything, because all of our clothing that we had got mildewed,
Mm-hmm.
and it was of no good to anybody.
Right. Okay. Now, did you get leave for a while before you had to go somewhere else? Could you go home, or?
No, I came right from there, right straight through home. Apparently they had all the legal papers ready for us to go, and
Okay. Yeah. So you do get a leave then.
Yeah.
So you get about 30-day
that's
leave.
when I came home for 30 days.
Okay. And what did you do after that?
Then I went back, after I went back off that leave, I reported to the Fargo building in Boston, Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
which was made over from a hotel for holding for naval personnel.
All right.
And I got kind of fortunate there. You had signed something to do while you were there, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And when I got ready to leave there to go to another base, why, the old boatswain's mate said, Barker said, what did you have to do while you were here? And I said, well, nobody assigned me to nothing. And he said, boy, you were lucky. But I got to eat and sleep and go on liberty whenever
Mhm.
I had a chance to go on liberty. Really had a nice time then. And it was worth a lot.
Okay.
Met
Now-
some wonderful people.
All right. Because you've got something in the notes here about meeting a couple of girls who had a brother in the service. Or?
Yes, sir. That was very interesting. These two girls, we met them one time when we was on liberty, and they wanted us to come up to the house, and we said, well, one of these days maybe we'll do that. So we went up one weekend, and we weren't too flinty for money, and
Mhm.
I said, let's give them a jingle. So we did. Told them where we were at, and she said, well, you stay right there. We'll be down and get you. So they came down, and we went back to their place, and they had the most fabulous home, just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of pinball and game machines in the basement. And a wonderful family. And they had a son in the service.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent the whole day with them, had a nice meal. And I always thought that was the most wonderful thing that could happen.
All right. Now, because you're in the service officially anyway, still until March of '46. Now, you eventually had real duty to perform. I mean, you're in Boston for a while, but what did you do after that?
Well, we just kind of traveled around. We didn't do much. I went down to a place, can't recall now what it was, but we lived in Quonset huts. One of the, down from Newport, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there for a while. We didn't have nothing to do.
Mhm.
Just
So,
like
so you
hang around.
you weren't training people or anything like that?
No, we were just waiting our time to get out because the war had ended about that time.
Mm-hmm. And then did you Where else did you get to go?
Then I went from there to, when I got discharged, I went to Bainbridge, Maryland, and was discharged from there. And so I went to a store, a clothing store there in the big town, and got myself a nice suit. Got all dressed up, and I came home in a suit of clothes instead of my uniform, but I still got it yet today.
All right.
I had a real nice set of tailor-mades. Boy, they were nice.
All right. Now, once you finally get home, what did you do?
Well, I just kind of hung around for a while, and you know, we got a little bit of a substance, some way of money substituted for servicemen, as I recall. And then later on, I decided, well, I guess I'll go to work. So then I went to Federal Mogul in Greenville and got an interview down there, and I was hired in down there to work in the plating department. So, and I worked there for 33 and a half years, which I never regretted, and they've done awful good by us on retirement.
All right. Now, you think back to the time that you spent in the Navy, and especially out there in the Pacific, are there other particular events or incidents that kind of stand out in your mind that we haven't brought into the story here yet?
Well,
or particular people that you remember well from the crew that you were with?
well, yes, come to think about it, there is. I worked a short while in the bakery when I was in the islands too. And we had a guy in there that he was a pretty well-built man. And he was telling us what he could do. Well, our flour, when we got it over there, was in a paper bag inside of a burlap bag. And he told us fellas, he says, I can pick up that about 400 pounds of flour, he says, with my teeth. And we said, no way, you were just joking. So we took up a little collection amongst the mess hall crew and the guys that working in the bakery, and he got all set, and he bent over and put one hand on each knee like that, you know, and got the ears of that bag in his teeth. And another guy got down on the floor, and when she cleared the floor, the guy went with his hand underneath the bag like that. Really remarkable.
Now, were you betting for him or against him?
No, we didn't think he, no, we got the collection for him to see him do it.
Oh, okay.
Which that was kind of neat. I thought that was pretty clever. But he was strong. I tried it with a 25-pound pack of flour and thought I was going to take my teeth out.
All right. Now, you look back at the time you spent in the service. How do you think that affected you, or what did you take out of it?
Well, I'll tell you what. To be true with you, I think it was the greatest thing that any young man could face. Because you learn to get along with other men, other people, and that's important, really, in life, I think.
All right. Well, makes for a good story. So thanks for coming on in and sharing it today.
I'm glad to help you out.
All right.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. And if I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.